That was so intense, you guys. What a vibe.
That was awesome.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the very first Audience Building Bootcamp. So as you can tell, it is not nearly as intense of a vibe as all of the branding will lead you to believe. But that being said, everything still will be important and relevant information that you should take to heart and utilize in your practices when it comes to being an author and doing the stuff.
I couldn't agree more. I concur with all aforementioned statements. We are chill, but what we're calling you to be as authors, not as chill. We're holding ourselves to high standards of excellence.
Yeah, so we have some slides that we're going to share with you guys today. And in those slides, I will also explain what the rest of the boot camp is going to look like, because it is 6 weeks long and you will get one of these videos every week. And also, as we go through this, feel free to drop your questions in the comments. And if you have questions that you want to save till like the very end, so that way, because there will be a Q&A moment at the end of the video. And so those questions I will see faster when they're saved at the end. So just think about that. But also feel free to chit chat with each other in the comments as you're noodling and taking in all of this information, because at times it might feel a little bit like a fire hose, but we've got a lot of good stuff for you guys today. And if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to New Degree Press author coaches. You can reach out to either one of us on Quip at any time. Other people watching, you can find us at any of the information below, or on Instagram at author M Finklea or Kyra _and_writes. So without further ado, I'm going to do the screen share thing.
Drum roll, please.
Here we go.
That was a weird drum roll. I apologize, everyone.
All right, Kyra, you tell me if at any point this doesn't look right.
And it looks good right now.
Cool. Can you see our faces?
Yes, both
Look
of them.
at that.
Both iterations.
All right, so this is us. For those who are not familiar, my name is Mackenzie Finklea. I specialize in nonfiction works. My first book, Beyond the Halls: An Insider's Guide to Loving Museums, was an industry nonfiction book about museums because I'm obsessed with them. I love them and I want other people to love them too. That being said, I also am currently working on a fiction work also related to museums and current ethical issues in the industry. So I can help advise on those things. But Kyra Ann Dawkins is a more seasoned fiction author, and I would love for her to introduce her work.
Hello, beautiful people. Alongside my incredible colleague, Mackenzie Finklea, I am an author coach at New Degree Press. I also am stepping into my role as head of community. I wrote my debut novel, The We and the They, which is a dystopian oral history. And if that sounds interesting, that's because it is, I promise. And for my next book, Azara Blaze, it sort of draws up on the same dystopian themes, but focuses more on individual grief as opposed to collective grief. And so, yeah, I've been here for a minute and I'm just super excited to help you guys out throughout this bootcamp process.
Yay. All right, cool. So we progress forward. What to expect from this series? Okay, so here's what you're going to get. You're going to get about 30 minutes of lecture from us, 30 minutes of workshop time. So what that means is you've set aside an hour in your day to watch us talk to you, but we're really only going to talk to you for about half an hour. There will be time for questions, but this stream will probably not last for the full hour. That might vary week to week, but since you've set aside your hour, use the other 30 minutes to do the things that we talked about in the stream while it's fresh on your mind and you can get to work on those things. If you don't do it during the stream, do it during the week of the stream. Because for those in the New Degree Press author program currently, all of this is pertinent information to help prepare you for the next step of the publishing journey. And you're going to want to get on this as soon as possible. Otherwise, you're going to meet one of the author coaches later, ask a question, and his name is John Saunders, and you'll be like, what do I do? And he'll go, get a time machine and start sooner. That's one of his classic pieces of advice. So with that, you will also get tools and templates from us for building your audience and managing this build out project from authors who have lived this experience. And if you're on Quip, you're going to get them in there. And if you're watching on YouTube, you're going to get those resources down below under free resources. So #yay. Author branding. That's what we're talking about today. Kyra, you want to introduce this concept?
Author branding. I mean, a huge part of being an author is writing the darn book, like that, or whatever content that you're creating. That is a huge component of it. But a huge part of garnering and sharing your stories with the world is having a cohesive sense of identity beyond the pages of your book. Readers love stories, but they also love the people behind stories. And so author branding is critical to success, because once they finish the book, do you want them to basically like drop the book and keep going on with their lives? No, not necessarily. You want for them to feel welcomed into the broader community of the messages that you want to share. So that's why author branding is very important to be intentional about from the outset of your author journey.
And we often think about this separately from our own lives and whatever else we are. We've had authors come to us in the past being like, hey, like I'm a business professional or I'm a lawyer, but I'm writing a poetry book under a pseudonym. What do I do? Right? You can create an entire author brand around this different entity, your life as an author. That's one way to look at it. So yes, it's the intentional messaging and maintenance of continuity of messages across all formats of your work. It encapsulates the messages and aesthetics of your content. So both of these things end up reinforcing each other at the end of the day, in that when you start working on your author brand now, for those who have yet to publish a book, sorry, my cat was trying to grab my sweater. Stop it. For those who have yet to publish a book, it's gonna help you massively in the promotion and having a huge launch when your book is ready to go out into the world. For example, this is Miss Haley Newland, who is an author coach and teacher and professor and writer extraordinaire, who has published now 3 books with New Degree Press, if I am not mistaken. Is that correct, Kyra? The 3rd one is published?
The 3rd one is in production.
It is in production, but will be published.
Yes.
And this is her general brand. She is a horror writer. Can you tell? So that's the idea. So branding is also, it's a very visual thing, but it also can be something when it comes to your content too, when it comes to videos, when it comes to the written word that's in your work, the emoji choices that you make, the font choices that you make. It's all working together. You've also got Miss Morgan Wider here, who's got really great continuity in color, very much has a color palette, which has a lot to do with what she is teaching about, which is wardrobe. And a lot of wardrobe ends up being color related. So all of these color choices that she's made, you'll also notice are very beautiful on her, which is very convenient for when she takes pictures to go with her brand. Very intentional stuff. And it's not just color. There's font. There's also, so the things that she's chosen to talk about, right? As a speaker, being a stylist, being inspirational, I am worthy, words of affirmation, like that's all part of your brand too. The things and messages. Ultimately, that's what the author brand is, right? It's the centralized message. Like, why did we write the book that we wrote, right? Because there's a message that we want to put out there into the world, and your author brand reinforces that message.
And super quickly, those 2 examples, Haley is an excellent example of a fiction author brand, and Morgan Wider is an excellent example of a more nonfiction author brand.
I hand this one to you.
So why does it matter? Ultimately, author branding helps you, because at the end of the day, you, like, of course you wrote a book to write a book, because that in and of itself is awesome. But I'm sure, like, even within the broader context of writing that book, you have further dreams, further aspirations. And in developing author branding, you become an embedded member of your community, of a space that you wanted to get into through this book. It'll help you engage with the audience who you want to read your work. So not only will you be accredited as a source of information, as a source of inspiration, as a source of knowledge in the space that you're writing in, but your audience members will recognize you as such and turn to you for your thoughts, your content, etc. And as you continue to iterate on your author branding, because bear in mind, the decisions that you make now, you want to maintain continuity, but you are allowed to change and grow as an author. You can hone your image as a thought leader, because ultimately, again, this is about crafting who you want to be in your work and beyond your work. And again, create consistency. Consistency is key. Like this is not to say that people aren't multifaceted, because people are multifaceted, but there's a way to be consistent in the depiction of your multifacetedness. And that just makes it all the more intriguing.
That's so good. Okay, so this is the moment where you can kind of work along with us in what we think about. Okay, so we've said a lot of words. We've talked about kind of generally what a brand is and what it looks like. How can you start to think about it for yourself? So what I want you to do is think about this and go ahead and drop it in the comments. What are your 3 things? What are your 3 identities that you embody in your author persona? So to give you guys an example, Kyra and I both did this exercise. And what I was able to come up with is, I am a museum nerd, I am a publishing coach, and I write museum-y books. That is going to be the primary content you are going to see from me if you go and follow any of my social media accounts. If you go and follow my Instagram, it's going to be a lot of publishing coach related things. If you go and follow me on LinkedIn, I'm going to be commenting on articles about museum ethics, and I'm going to be commenting on articles about the publishing industry. So these are my 3 identities that are continuous. And when you do drop a comment, feel free to drop it all in one line. So it doesn't have to be boop, boop, boop. Kyra.
Yeah, so I would say I am a speculative fiction author. I love speculative and magical realism things. I honor human voices and facilitate conversations around human life and heritage, which touches into some of my work in language rights advocacy. And I love family. If I can go through 15 minutes without a Disney reference, something is awry. So, and Disney, the thing that I love about Disney is that how much it reflects family. So those are my big 3.
Definitely. And what you'll see in Kyra's branding and content is the occasional, it's like a Mickey Mouse hunt that you can do at Disneyland. She'll occasionally have like little Mickeys and things in there, which is really cute. So this exercise will help you outline the 3 areas of content that you can push beyond. Here's my book. This is my book. Buy my book. These are the other things that you're talking about in building that community. It also helps you utilize and figure out what like your author hashtags are, because hashtags are important and we should not be scared of them. We should use them, because I know that there was this era of Instagram, and this is something I'm still definitely guilty of on my personal page, but on my author page, I'm not scared of hashtags. But aesthetically and historically, it's like, don't use hashtags because I'm too good for hashtags, or what? We're not scared of hashtags. It's how people find us. So those are important. The content. Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, let the algorithm serve you. Yes. Let it serve you.
Yes. So an example that Haley has given of her content, right? She'll share what she's working on. So her horror novel that she's currently writing with The Conjuring on in the background. So it'll be like an image of her writing and then The Conjuring up on the TV. Her posts will use the hashtag horror writer, horror movies, or the name of the film title that goes best with the content that she's writing. All very relevant. I would love to take this moment and pull some of these up on the screen because these are great examples. We've got, I'm a chronically ill person, I'm an environmental activist, and I'm an artist. Those are all great things. Those all have their own niches within different platforms on social media. Those are all excellent job. We've got, I'm a young scientist and innovator. I'm an innovation advocate for youth and girls, and I work to support my community and solve local and global problems. Amazing. You guys are killing this exercise.
Look at y'all.
Collective leadership advocate, movement lawyer, immigrant, mother. Incredible.
Y'all are killing
Great job, you guys.
Keep them coming in the chat.
So yes, let's do it. You guys do the exercise. Think about it. If you don't feel like sharing it, just write it down on a piece of paper on your desk, type it up, use a typewriter, however you want to do it. And then keep it somewhere so that you're looking at it and you can help yourself not reinvent the wheel every time you're thinking about what kind of content should I create. And the other thing that's neat about this too is making these goals or these identities public and continuing to put them out there. Other people will think of you when they see things and send them your way, and that's free content. If Kyra sends me a museum article that she saw and it made her think of me, I'm like, excellent. I'm going to use this and I'm going to make a commentary post on this article. Boom. I do that a lot. Like if people send me an article, they're like, I think you'd be into this. I'm like, yes, thank you. I will be sharing that.
We love to see
it. 2 slides asking you, what'd you come up with? I love it. Okay. So that is the end of the author branding presentation, as it were. Now, definitely drop a question in the chat if you have any questions about all of the author branding things that we said. We actually ended up, look at this, 15 minutes for questions. Crazy. So hopefully y'all have some. Kyra, do you have any words of wisdom or additional thoughts about author branding?
That's a really excellent question. I would say vulnerability is key. Like in the curation of your author brand, don't feel like you have to put up a facade of neatness, because A, that's not true, and B, the kind of people you actually want to be engaging with your work will find that off-putting. So
that's true. If you're too polished and perfect, you're not approachable, really. It's not, I mean, authenticity is so important, right? And that also helps with relatability, which ultimately, in my personal opinion, relatability is the #1 thing that makes things popular on the internet.
Yeah, it's got to be.
So why not be real?
Yeah, might as well. I mean, it's important to, of course, being professional and having coherence and consistency is important, but also don't be afraid to not take yourself too seriously. Like if there's a meme that's relevant to your book, like don't feel like you can't make that reference, you know, because there are lots of spaces where that will resonate, because a lot of people enjoy memes. Like, for example, you could take those kinds of risks.
So this is a great question here, and that is part of the Audience Building Bootcamp, I promise. So next week, we will be talking about social media. It will not be the first, it will not be the last time we talk about social media. But if you want to think about what to do this week, the sneak peek of next week is we're going to be thinking about asking ourselves, what is my current digital presence? Do I have a website? What social media platforms do I have? And which ones are my strongest? And so sneak peek into that, there will be an audience there will be a boot camp session about author websites. So we also recommend that you look into that. So start exploring those things. But I would encourage you to ask, like, you haven't created your first post on Instagram yet, not sure where to start. Someone suggested down here, a great place to start is with a meet the author post. You know, a face, what you write, for those of you who haven't published a book yet, which NDP authors who are watching, you are publishing later this year. So you haven't published yet, but you're still, you know, meet the author, meet the writer, talk about the author branding exercise that we just did. Who are you? What are your 3 identities, right? You can start, and there's all kinds of content ideas, but one of the key things that we'll tell you in later boot camps is look to other people to get ideas about what to post. So follow other authors, other writers, other readers, and you'll come up with all sorts of good content about, you know, what are you currently reading? We will this will be the first but not the last time we tell you that great artists steal, but they do not plagiarize.
Key difference.
What is a good component to start with, i.e. color palette, captions, photos, etc.?
That's a good question. I think it kind of depends on the platform in question, sort of. Like if we're thinking in terms of website, color palette and fonts, huge.
Those are important to decide on. But if we're thinking about Instagram, it doesn't matter as much.
Yeah. Photos are important on Instagram, like incorporating images of you that portray multiple facets of your personality that are pertinent to your author identity would be for Instagram.
I struggle with this one because if you go and look at my Instagram, I flip back and forth between, like, my nonfiction book that I'm currently writing is very dark academia. I said fiction, right?
I think so.
My fiction book that I'm writing is very dark academia. My nonfiction book is like a rainbow. And my general personality, I like to wear a lot of color, a lot of pastels. And so you'll see kind of a mix of those things. The nice thing about Instagram is you can kind of plot out your posts and mix up, like arrange them in the grid how you want it to all look. But a good component to start with is what we just instructed, right? Author brand. Think about what your identities are, and that will give you a good jumping off point.
Mm-hmm. Also, just to quickly jump off of Mackenzie's example, light academia is a thing, and I basically think that Mackenzie embodies that. So,
I mean, just look at my background. I mean, okay. So I love that you guys are getting ahead of the ball on this one. We're happy to touch on these questions. Should we focus on just one social media app or try to be on multiple?
Well, I think that ultimately, there's actually one of our author coaches does an excellent job of sharing this advice. Mackenzie, like, remind me of who specifically says this, but it's
Steven.
Great. Yes, it is Steven. So it's great to be very present on one or two, but cast your net wide and like have an account in all of the places that are relevant, right? So be very, like, if Instagram is like the hub of your audience, then have an Instagram and be very active on Instagram. If Facebook is the hub of your audience, or if LinkedIn is the hub of your audience, be very active on those places. But if you also happen to have Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok increasingly becoming relevant, you can have content that echoes or mirrors your primary content on your primary account.
Yep. Meet your readers where they are.
Mm-hmm.
So wherever your audience is, that's where you should be, to bounce off what Kyra was saying. Also, because they might tag you and stuff. They might want to tag you, in the future if they're reading your work, right? Or if they see you at a speaking event, or they just listened to a podcast you were featured on, they might want to tag you. And if you don't have an account, they cannot. So think about where the largest part of your audience would theoretically exist. It might take some guessing in the beginning, since this is audience building, right? But what Kyra was alluding to is, if, for example, you're writing industry nonfiction, I would highly encourage you to have a LinkedIn if you don't already. And if you're saying, I'm a career writer, I don't have a, yes, you should still have a LinkedIn. And chances are, if you're writing industry nonfiction, is you have extensive experience in a particular industry. Yeah. Okay. I always second guess my posts and then feel as if the content may not come across as intended. I feel I may offend unintentionally.
I think ultimately, I mean, it could be helpful if you're ever hesitant about a piece of content going out in the world. It could be worth having somebody close to you, just look over it and give their input. Like, just if you're particularly hesitant about one piece of content, but if you don't second guess your content to the point where it prevents you from sharing it, because ultimately, and this is a huge part of being an author, of being growing in your book journey, not everyone is going to love what you have to say and do. Like, criticism, warranted and unwarranted, is a thing that we have to encounter in the creative space. So I think that the fact that if you're concerned about it, you probably don't have to be.
That I have a little hype man who lives in my head and says, just post the thing. If I start getting in my head about whatever I'm about to post, like, oh, I don't look as cute, or I'm not wearing any makeup in this picture, or I'm not as funny as I think I am, the little guy in my head is like, just post it. And ultimately, it ends up doing just fine. And if you come back to it later and you're second guessing it later on, you can always take it down. That being said, I want to encourage caution with, don't offend people. Don't try not to embarrass yourself, egregiously. Don't put up pictures of you breaking the law, right? Think twice before you do that kind of thing. But what I'm encouraging is, don't second guess yourself. Don't criticize yourself so harshly. Hopefully I portrayed that well. Kyra?
I think that was perfect. Wouldn't change a thing.
Okay, what's the range of branding components like to create diversity of content while remaining consistent? Is there sort of formula that you follow?
I guess this answer is definitely different for every author and on every platform that they use. I, for example, particularly since I've started my Reels binge, I've enjoyed making those. My goal was to make one reel per week, but I don't want for like all of my content to solely be reels. I'm talking about Instagram to be more specific. So I make one reel a week and I try to offset that with at least one post, like regular post, or 2 regular posts. So that means reels will never take up more than half of my content. But that's a way that helps me diversify because I really enjoy making reels, but I also don't want my audience to only associate me with one form of content.
Yep. My advice would be twofold. 1, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
But also 2, diversify your content. Like the answer is kind of in your question, in that do reels, do posts, do infographics, and mix it all up. Don't necessarily do 3 infographics in a row, 3 reels in a row, and like not at the same time. Again, you can do whatever you want, but I would encourage mixing it up every once in a while because that will it'll ultimately look great. But at the same time, we've got one particular author who I can think of who was kind of known as like the video guy. And that's how he documented his entire author journey. He would just put up his phone and take a video and post that. And so on his Instagram, it was just a bunch of videos of him documenting his author journey, which people really responded to. People love talking heads. They love knowing that you have a voice and a personality, and hearing how things are going candidly. Because that's the other thing about videos is it's like what's happening to me right now. It's natural, it's real, unless you do heavy editing.
But also really quickly, ultimately diversifying your content is great, but if you want to establish a pattern to your content, it's best to do that for, how do I best describe this? For limited periods of time. Like if you are revving up to a launch of your next book or something like that, you can dedicate 3 to 4 weeks of a pattern of posts introducing your characters, for example. Or if if your content is going to be predictable in format, it's good to kind of make it for a limited time, like an article series. Like so your audience can expect a cadence like for that short period of time without projecting that onto your content as a whole, just for a special season in your writing journey.
All right, we have 2 more questions. Time for 2 more, and there are 2 left. So excellent. 1. Nice. Love this question because we plan on addressing that directly in a slide next week where we will get into the nuances of how you could do either. Personally, for example, and so feel free to explore this in the meantime, I have a personal Instagram and an author Instagram. Kyra has one author Instagram, and it's intermingled with her personal life. So it's the short answer is it's up to you in terms of how you want to present yourself and how much time you're willing to commit to maintaining either one of those. And then Canva is life. Yes, this video is not in any way sponsored by Canva, but it is something that I use every single day for everything from my Instagram to my newsletters to posters for book signings, all the things.
Yes, that part. Yeah, Canva has saved me. It's made it so much more accessible.
That is that. This is Audience Building Bootcamp for today. Now what you do with your next 30 minutes of your hour that you've set aside, do the author branding exercise and start to think about your digital presence because that is what we're going to be talking about next week.
Beautifully said. If you guys have any more questions about this workshop and I guess what we will begin to talk about in future audience building boot camps, don't hesitate to drop them in the comments below. We do read them and we do respond. So looking forward to interfacing with you guys in the coming weeks.
That's all for today. Bye, everyone.
Bye.